let's get started. I'm going to have Anna-Elise introduce yourself really fast, and then we'll jump into some questions.
Hi, everybody. I'm excited to be here. My name is Anna-Elise Smith, MPP 2020, and I'm a project analyst at Resource Innovations. Resource Innovations, I'll just do a quick overview, is a majority woman-owned and controlled company, and we mostly do demand response and energy efficiency program design, evaluation, regulatory support, and also cost-effectiveness studies.
Awesome. So we're going to start with your current role at Resource Innovations, and we'll back up a little bit to your time at Harrison before that and such. So let's start where you are right now. Could you talk a little bit more about your role at Resource Innovations and what your main responsibilities are, and say what a typical day looks like for you?
Yeah, so at Resource Innovations, I mainly do three things: analysis, reporting, and then collaborating to achieve the analysis and reporting. So for example, analysis could be finding the impact of an event, just like we do in our program evaluation classes related to demand response programs, cost effectiveness of demand response programs, looking at outage costs and doing different economic studies around that. And then reporting could be translating results into a memo, a long form report, or making interesting graphics and charts.
Right. And so structural wise, what does that organizational structure look like? Do you work on a team? How are those teams set up? And how many people do you work with on a daily basis?
Yeah. So I think there's kind of two ways I would categorize the structure, because there's the company structure and then there's like the team structure, and they are a little bit different. So on our team as a company, so first way would be like there's analysts, there's project analysts like me, consultants, and then managing consultants or principals, and they all have kind of different roles. So as an analyst, when I'm working on a project, I'm typically doing the bulk of the analysis and the reporting, while a consultant may interface with clients more and do more administrative work related to winning bids and so on for projects. And a principal or a managing consultant would be even further away from the analysis, working more on business development, winning projects, and making sure that things are running smoothly. So within a team structure, like within a project, when I'm working on a team, it's usually just one analyst, so me, a consultant, and potentially a principal as well. And so I'll be conducting the bulk of the analysis, driving the project forward, and kind of asking any questions along the way, or bringing things to the attention of the client or the consultant that I'm working with. When I do work with other analysts, I think that's really great because we get to be more hands-on together, but it typically happens when we're working on a bigger project where it's going to require more than one of us to get everything done, if that makes sense. So in a typical day, because I am working on many projects at once, I'm interacting with a lot of people across the company. But it kind of depends on what you're working on. It could be one person you talk to in a day or 15, I guess. Mm-hmm.
So how many projects are you on right now? Good question.
Seven?
Is that a normal amount, or are there like ebbs and flows, or like a busy season, or no?
There's definitely ebbs and flows. So I've been told, because I've been here for about a year now, and I've been told the summer is usually quiet and the winter is heavier. I think we departed from that a little bit in the past year, potentially with COVID, maybe not, maybe just chance. But it's definitely more of a busy season right now with a lot of things coming up and holidays, complicating that.
So what kind of projects are you on right now?
Yeah, so just to kind of give an idea of the variety of things or the different ways that Harris skill set can be applied to these types of projects is, I'll give maybe three examples that are different from each other. So a very standard project would be a load impacts project, where a utility has this program that is designed to reduce how much energy customers use during the peak hours of the day, typically from 3 to 7 in the summer or something like that. And we would be evaluating how much demand reduction did they actually see. So we're collecting customers' energy data, learning when the events took place, and then evaluating the impacts of the program on a given day or throughout the whole season. An example of a different type of project that I'm working on right now would be a process evaluation, which most people would call a survey evaluation. So one utility has a program where they take control. This is a weird way to put it. It's like a direct load control program. So they take control of customers who decided to be in the programs, air conditioning units or thermostats, during peak hours, and kind of do a pre-cooling of the home. So turning it on before the hottest part of the day and then turning it off or increasing the temperature for the later part of the day. And so we were collecting survey responses from participants of that program to see, are they satisfied with the program? Are they hot during events? Do they find it uncomfortable? And do they think that the incentive that they are given for joining the program is worth it? Should the incentive be increased? Would they recommend it to friends? Things like that. So it's cool to see, the more hard data quantitative analysis as well as qualitative analysis skills that we learn at Harris being used at the same time. Another program or project that I'm just starting to work on now that I think is really important in the world, in light of the outages that we are starting to see more and more in California due to wildfires, as well as this past year in Texas when they had the deep freeze. We're going to be evaluating customers' willingness to pay to avoid outages like that. And by modeling customer outage costs in ways where it's literally a monetary value, like did everything in your fridge, how much is everything in your fridge worth? So if there's no power, but also in terms of less tangible costs like inconvenience and things like that. By collecting that information, we're really giving the utilities a number of how much they should invest in resiliency projects to avoid outages. So I think that's really important to increase grid resiliency right now. Mm-hmm.
Sounds very cool. So what's the average range or of length of your projects? Are these like year-long things, just a couple of months, or just all over the board?
I think I would also say all over the board. Typically, maybe 8 months is probably average. And even if the bulk of the work can be done very quickly, like within a couple of weeks or a month, you're still waiting on data to come in, or sometimes you can get ahead of it, just finish it really fast and then wait around for a bit, I guess. But most of the time, there's a lot of waiting in between. Okay, here's the project. Now we do work to figure out how we're going to evaluate it, what we're going to do, and then we're waiting a while for data and things like that. But there are some, and I would say they're not the usual, that span years. So that does happen. So most of the time, less than a year is probably the right number. And what's also cool is that a lot of the projects we do over and over again. So, when I was first starting, it wasn't like I had to start from zero. There was a rich code base and like documentation from the last 5 years that we did it, so being able to kind of like ramp you up into doing more independent work, I guess, because some projects we do every year, Yeah.
So I'm assuming you're working with utilities that are all over the country and not just where you are locally.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So you've been there a year, so that's a pretty decent amount of time. Some of the other fellows I've been talking to have been at their places of employment for a little bit less. So this is a good base here. So what do you like best so far about working at Resource Innovations, and what have you found to be the most challenging?
Yeah. I really like the variety of work and kind of the independence and flexibility, I would call it. We're still remote for now, and a good portion of the team had actually been remote pre-COVID, but starting to go back into the office like now and then. But I like that there's a variety, that I can kind of, do my own thing and not be, it's like, I'm not sure how to describe it. There's flexibility, I would say, but also hard work at the same time. And I know I wrote more things down. I want to say them. Oh yeah, and then the hands-on data analysis is something I was really looking for in a job, and I definitely have that. And I also enjoy like how much I have actually learned in this past year about the energy industry, and how many different facets of it there are in the first place is kind of mind-blowing. So I think I've been able to like continue to learn every day, which is great. Aspects that are challenging, I think this one's really relevant for people who are still in school, because it's like when I was first starting, it was very challenging, and now it's kind of faded away. And I think a lot of students can relate. When you're doing analysis like this in a workplace setting or in an academic research setting, I think it can be really hard to come from the like problem set, there's a right and a wrong answer mindset, to the reality that there's never really a right or wrong answer. You just have to do the best and have a defensible, well thought through, methodology. And I think that was challenging, was kind of just like taking the plunge into something that seems like it's so easy to get it wrong, I guess. So yeah, just when starting off a project in the beginning, I found it, I guess, intimidating to like kind of be on my own in it. Yeah.
Right. So then can you talk a little bit about your path to resource innovations? Is this an organization you had been following for some time? You could also talk about how it's been acquired, or you were acquired previously.
Mhm.
And just kind of your path there, and yeah, how'd you get there?
Yeah. So I hadn't heard of Resource Innovations, formerly Nexent. It was Nexent when I joined in January, and we were acquired in May, maybe. I hadn't heard of them. I had heard of other energy consulting firms, and they kind of had piqued my interest in my second year. So I guess I should back up even further. I just knew that I wanted to work in energy and climate, and learn more about solutions to our present problems when I was coming into school. And I didn't know if that was going to be a nonprofit, government, or private. I think I was heavily leaning nonprofit when I first started. But actually, Harris made me love working with data. So through time and through working with Epic, and working with a nonprofit while I was in school, I kind of, and in addition to those experiences, also like coming to panels like this and talking to more and more alumni and more peers, and just like getting a better understanding of what each career path might be like, kind of pointed me to a more specific direction that I knew that I wanted to be working on, solving climate problems and working on energy efficiency type things, but also that I wanted to work with data and be applying it to these problems. And so that kind of narrowed me down a bit. And through, as a 2020 graduate, through my long career search after graduating, I feel like that was the biggest part too of narrowing down my path. Having so many interviews and learning about so many different places, I really kind of felt like, okay, energy consulting is where I want to start off and kind of keep building my analytical and quantitative skills, and maybe later I can apply them in government or something. But yeah, so I found the job on LinkedIn actually, and we do have open positions now, so that's great. Yep.
Awesome. And if anyone on here wants to connect with Anna-Elise about any of those open positions or about resource innovations in general, if you want to share your email in the chat or anything,
Yeah,
or if you
definitely.
want to reach out to me, I can share that later. So that is an option. So now we are going to back up a little bit and talk more about your time at Harris. And so we already kind of talked about one of my first questions. So how did your time at Harris help you? You did touch on this a little bit. So if we're overlapping, just tell me and we can move on. But how did that help you, and what did you learn at Harris that's really helping you in this position right now?
Yeah. Hang on a sec. I took some notes. I want to double check because I'll forget something. That's okay. Yeah, so I think the first thing that Harris taught me, and I don't know if this is true for everybody, but it really like showed me what my potential could be. Seeing so many alumni speak, seeing so many impressive peers of mine, and having so many resources to do different experiences at Harris, it really made me more ambitious and made me believe in myself more. So that was great. But obviously the main thing I use every day is our Harris quantitative skill set. So the program evaluation, cost benefit analysis, and other and like energy focused energy policy classes I took, definitely use that every day. Mostly, the data analysis and some economic skills, use them every day. In addition to that, I feel like working in teams at Harris so often helped me kind of understand what my strengths were and also how to leverage my peers' strengths and just be like a better team worker, I guess. Just had a lot of practice with it in challenging high pressure settings, so that was also very useful.
So speaking of some of the courses, do you have any advice for specific courses for students to take, or a favorite course that you think everyone should take?
Yeah, I definitely, like I said, program evaluation, cost benefit analysis, probably the most useful classes, but that, just from the direction I've gone at least. But in addition to that, I think it's important to take ones just for fun that you enjoy or interested in your second year when you have time. Gina's International Climate Policy class was amazing. I definitely recommend that. And I also, during the first COVID quarter, I took, and I don't know the exact name, but it was like a advanced applied econometrics with Trevor Galen. And I really liked it. It was just like program eval, but from a different angle. So we studied a lot of the same topics, but I feel like I really got to understand them a lot better than I previously did, which shocked me, I guess. And it was cool to just have that different angle. Yeah.
Awesome. And were you involved in anything during your time at Harris or outside of Harris, like any types of other internships or organizations like that?
Yeah, so I was an intern with the Climate Registry during my first summer after Harris, and they are an internet or a North American-wide nonprofit that helps companies make greenhouse gas emissions reduction commitments and helps them track their emissions over time. It provides them like a online data tool to do that, and also just holds a lot of seminars and conferences to get the subnational world. So anyone who's not the federal government, essentially, is what I mean. If it's a company or if it's the US Post Office and things like that, help them make climate commitments and help them stick to them. And yeah, and so with them, I did a lot of different things. And I think it was really valuable in helping me to tackle a big problem all on my own was one thing I learned there. And I also got to meet so many people in the industry or across different industries that are interested in climate commitments and things like that. So they were really great to work with. And then I also was a fellow with EPIC in my second year, which was enormously valuable as well. I worked with Professor Ryan Kellogg and was evaluating the impact of the Jones Act, which causes ineffective oil and gas trade, essentially inefficient oil and gas trade. And so that was a great experience too, because once again, it's a theme I keep tapping into, but I guess I'm not sure exactly how to describe it, where you're faced with doing this big analysis by yourself and you have to really, it just was good practice on like taking the plunge into doing it and thinking everything through and defending what you've done essentially. And he was great to work with as well. So those were really valuable experiences.
Great. So let's back up even further. I want to get more into your path with like what you studied in undergrad, and then did you go straight into grad school? What made you want to go to grad school? Did you have a job or internships in between? Like what did that path look like?
Yeah, so I studied ecology and evolutionary biology in undergrad and got a certificate in renewable and sustainable energy systems. So I became interested in energy and environment probably right away when I was there, but I wasn't sure what a job would look like or what really exactly I was interested in. And kind of through taking a lot of those classes that were part of that certificate led me in this direction, I would say, where I just was really interested in energy and environmental policy. I thought about environmental law for a few years. And I had 1 year in between my undergrad and graduate degree. And I really found, I guess what kind of pushed me to go to grad school is I found I wasn't qualified for jobs that sounded cool to me, I guess. And so I just kept looking and kept trying to talk to people and learn like what direction can get me somewhere where I'd like to be. And just, kept talking to people and learning essentially and exploring and researching options. And I decided on policy school because it is a shorter degree than law school and because it seems to have more flexible, and I stand by this, I think you can do a lot of different things with a policy degree. And because I hadn't completely nailed down my interests yet, I thought that was a good path. Let me see, is there more to the question I can answer? I'm thinking. Yeah, and really, I thought I was going to go to a different school, but after visiting U Chicago on admitted students day, I knew that this is where I should go. It's just has so many resources for students to do extra things and to support students while they're here. And also EPIC was a big draw for me and a lot of the classes in energy and environment as well. Mhm.
Right. So otherwise, we already talked about other fellowships and internships. Were there any other internships that you did during undergrad or after or graduate school that helped shape who you were? I mean, I had like countless internships, so I don't know if other people have these experiences. So anything else to add with that?
Yeah, I did. I guess one that really started it off for me, I think I was a sophomore, and it might have been the first internship I ever had with Environment Colorado, where I was, well, I don't even know what we were campaigning for anymore, but what I remember I was in charge of working with professors and getting their signatures to support something we were sending off to the Colorado state legislature. And I actually got to testify in like the agriculture and environment committee at the state house, which was super cool. And I think that that kind of got me really interested in the energy and environmental policy direction, was just doing that a long time ago. And another thing I did while I was at University of Colorado for undergrad, which I think is kind of funny because it was just a random job, but then I ended up doing very similar things at the Climate Registry, years later, is we were actually counting the energy and water use for the dorms and like proposing ways to reduce it. And so it was so similar to the work the Climate Registry does, just on a very like a small scale. So that was cool. Mhm.
Awesome. So now looking forward a little bit more, how do you envision your career path from here? You're just getting started. Yeah. So what do you think?
Yeah, I still am in the boat a little bit about it could go one of many ways and probably be great. But yeah, my near-term goal is, right now I'm a project analyst, which is the step above the analyst. So I'd like to become a consultant so that I can work with clients one-on-one more often, and kind of have that mix of doing analysis and more project management and client interfacing. So that's a near-term goal of mine. Beyond that, I'm not sure if I would, in 5 years or 2 years, 3 years, or, next year, I don't know, if I would go to a different consulting firm and do similar work or try to get into government later on. I think it would be cool to work at the state level of government, especially right now. In Colorado, there's so many things going on, a lot of legislator being passed. I'm missing the word. A lot of things being passed right now that are really exciting for energy and environment. So that's one direction that's interesting to me. And then sometimes I think it would be cool to keep studying too, because I really love econometrics. So yeah, I think the most likely and probably what I would like to do the most would to be stay in consulting for at least like several years, and just see how that goes and how it progresses and how I can continue to learn and grow my career.
Great. So then none of this does not have to be energy related in any way. But what is your dream job? It could be making cupcakes. I don't care. But what if you could make it exist, or if it already does exist, what would that be?
I don't, and this was a hard question when I saw it, because I was like, wait, according to me a year ago, I'm at my dream job. So it's great.
Perfect.
And so I guess that gave me some like renewed whatever joy to remember that. But at the same time, I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe something with music. I don't know. I'd like to be a famous musician.
All right.
Life.
So what advice then would you give to students who are just starting to think about their futures, who are either applying for jobs now, who are in the thick of applications and interviews? Just what kind of advice do you want to give them?
Yeah, there's a couple things. I think with interviews, it all comes down to practice. And so if that means just interviewing a lot of places that you're not that interested in, I think it's worth it, because really practice, 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 and then you don't even have to think and you can be there, and be present. I also think it's really important to ask thoughtful questions, not in the first round necessarily, but in like later rounds of interviews. Maybe when you're face to face with someone higher up in the company, having a pretty long list of thought out questions, and then whichever ones they haven't answered yet, asking those, because you're also interviewing them. It might sound cliche, but really you do have choices, and yeah, you want to end up at a place that you're going to enjoy. And it also just shows that you're a very engaged candidate. I think, yeah, in the interviewing process, it's also really important to just keep reaching out. Some places take forever to get back to their candidates, but I think just maintaining your interest. Advice I have for right now, or before applying or while applying too, is just the networking and the reaching out to alumni, and all of that is also very valuable. I think I got to learn a lot about many different career paths through coming to career panels, and also just through alumni connections saying, oh, this person's in that industry and lives in your state, so you should talk to them. And even if they didn't get me a job, or they didn't do this or that, it's like at least I get to hear their entire career path, and I found it very valuable just to get a little taste of all these different options that you have. I think something else that's really important for Harris students specifically is to not put too much pressure on yourself in any given situation. I think it happens a lot and it's very easy to do, but to just like have faith in that things will work out and you will get a good job in it, even if it takes longer than you like.
Right. So we're gonna move on to the Q&A part. So attendees, if you have a question, you can raise your hand and then I'll call on you and we can unmute you and you can ask your question. But I know it's always a little bit for people to warm up. So I'm going to continue asking questions until someone raises their hand. So once you raise your hand, I will stop asking questions. But for now, I'm going to move on to some of my saved questions that I have. And we'll wait for you guys to come up with some other good inquiries. Okay, so let's go back a little bit to just in general, the field that you're in right now, and what are some of these current issues and trends that we should really know about and be aware of. You did mention a lot about, the deep freeze in Texas, wildfires in California, things like that. What other things do you think we should know about?
Yeah, so bringing that back up, just a renewed interest in grid resiliency from the utilities, I think, relating to those blackouts and outages that we're seeing. And then let me see if there's anything else I can think of. So one, I guess we also do see a lot of decarbonization happening, which is very exciting, and corporations taking stronger science-based commitments to emissions reductions. And even if it might seem bleak sometimes, these things really are happening every day. So corporations are taking ESG more serious than ever.
Good. And then again, in this same resource innovations topic, what are some other common career paths that some of your coworkers are on or were on? What did they study and how did they end up there too?
It can be kind of a mixed bag within my team. There are a couple other MPPs, so that's one way. There's also people who just have an undergraduate in economics. There's people who studied engineering, and then where they go from here is there's a lot of back and forth between the utilities and the consulting companies. So some of my managers, had worked at utilities previously. In addition to that, we just had someone who was here for a very long time leave and go into water and power, a local government. So it really is kind of all over the board in terms of where they go from here and where they started off. But mostly everybody has a quantitative background to start and some interest and or background in energy.
Awesome. Pausing here if anyone wants to raise their hand before I move on. Okay. So are there any new skills that you've developed so far in the past year as a professional that you can talk about?
I guess this is a good one. Yeah, so at Harris and before Harris, I used R a little bit. At Harris, I used it a lot, but I never really used Stata. And now I exclusively use Stata at work. So that's definitely a new skill to have gone from beginner to whatever I am now, fluent expert, I don't know. And then, because I really would just say that I've kind of applied the skills I learned at Harris in totally different ways. And so that is also growth and learning to me, but they're the classic program evaluation skills. So yeah, just really sharpen them. And I think one other thing actually is that I've gotten a lot more apt at like the data cleaning process where we don't have to do very much of it in school, but with real world data, it can be the bulk of the work really would be trying to sort out data issues and how can we fix this without asking for any more data, essentially. It's a big question and a challenge.
Right. Again, pausing here. Anyone? Okay. So then can you describe a little bit about what your company culture is like? Is it relaxed? Is it more rigid? I've just had experiences where things are like very structured and then other ones that are very not structured. So like where does it fall?
I think it falls on like not rigid. And I think that was, to me, a reason why I'm thinking, I want to go into consulting, but knowing I didn't really want to go to a big consulting firm because I wanted work-life balance, I guess. And so I do have that here, which is great. So it's kind of funny. I don't know, because there's nobody really like looking over your shoulder ever or like micromanaging in any way. So that's why I would go towards the not rigid side. But also everybody does work very hard and there's a high, level of work expected from you, like not in terms of quantity sometimes, but in terms of quality. But everybody seems to just get there on their own, which is great, I think. And also something that I think is really great about where we are, or where I am too, is people are very willing to help and very collaborative. So when I was first starting, you just have so many questions, and I found you could pretty much interrupt anybody in the middle of their day and they would help you or hop on the phone. And maybe one downside of being remote is if you were more shy or didn't know if you should be asking, then maybe you might miss out on that. It's kind of like every time you ask, somebody will help or try to, but it's up to you to ask. So that's kind of, it goes both ways, I guess. But I do like how everyone is willing to help each other, even if they're not on that project, etc.
Yeah. So either at Harris or just in general professional life, have you had a mentor or any advisor or someone that you've worked with that has like helped you in your career just decide things and opportunities?
From Harris, I was very lucky to know Anne McCabe. So she spoke at an energy career, I think it was HIA career panel when I was in school, and I reached out to her afterwards. And she actually was the executive director of the Climate Registry when I first started working there. She also taught my policy lab. So I got to know her in my first year, and we've stayed in touch throughout. And she's introduced me to so many people in the industry across the US, which is great. She even happens to be friends with like the executive vice president of my team. And I didn't know that until after I got the job. But so she's just very cool. And she's worked in many different facets of this industry. And she's very willing to help Harris grads, connect them with people, tell them about jobs, etc. So that Anne is great, and I'm very lucky that I reached out to her once, and now she's been helpful.
Just goes to show that, you know, just sending one email could like really change some things. So don't be afraid to reach out to somebody.
Exactly.
Most people are willing to help you.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Pausing here again. Okay, so then I'm gonna go down a little track of more like work-life balance. So like, how many hours do you typically work in a week? When you have those like busier times, are you spending a lot more time on the computer or in the office? And like, how does Resource Innovations help with like establishing that work-life balance?
Yeah. So seriously, I rarely work over 40 hours. But I could definitely work more, but I don't need to, which is great. And so during like a very busy time, I guess it'd be like 42 to 45 hours. At the same time, it's hard to say when you're working from home. Like I'm keeping track on an Excel spreadsheet by myself, and I don't know how accurate that is. But it definitely, I'm definitely never doing like 60-hour weeks or anything like that. But there's definitely times when I'm working a lot later than other days. And then the way that they maintain it, I would say, is there's this big process called the resource planning, where all the managers get together once a month and look at all the projects that are coming down the pipeline, the ones that we already have, and kind of assign hours in the spreadsheet to make sure they're distributing it evenly, fairly, but also like reasonably. So that also determines when we need to hire people. If we see, in January, we're going to have 50 more hours than we have people for, then we're going to put out an ad to hire somebody. And so I think they do a pretty good job of maintaining it through that process. In addition to that, we also have like weekly check-ins bi-weekly check-ins with your direct manager, and they always ask, are you light, are you heavy, etc. And you can always kind of, if not always, like at a time right now, nobody would really be able to pick up somebody else's project because it is very busy, but also nobody's working 50 hours a week. So it's okay. But typically, like, let's say it wasn't December, and I was overloaded, I could tell my manager I'm overloaded, and then, reach out to the other analysts and see if anybody is light, And so that's happened before, where I've had things taken off my plate, or I've taken things off of their plate, So
yeah, that's nice. Is there anything that has surprised you or that you wish you'd known about before getting into this field?
I know I was surprised to see that as people move up the company, they move further away from the analysis work, because to me, I still feel like it takes so much expertise to, like properly run an analysis, I guess. So I was surprised to see that if I stay there for 15 years, I won't be doing any analysis then. But I guess that's how it works a lot of places. Is just, you move up and you just become more administrative and less maybe hands-on in some ways, but maybe more hands-on in other ways. So I know that I've learned a lot about the more business side of what it means to work in a consulting firm, and how they work, I guess, is definitely interesting to me, because I didn't know anything about that before.
Yeah. Okay. This is, I think, going to be my last question, unless someone throws their hand up. Otherwise, this is gonna be it. Do you have any recommendations on like organizations or things to help people with professional development, or literally just to follow to stay up to date on what's going on? So this is like podcasts or newsletters. What are things that are in your inbox that you think people would appreciate to know about if you have time to do that?
Yeah, I think that's kind of tough, just because I often think to myself, I need to stay more up to date with things that I'm not working on, but in the industry, I haven't done that so much. And I know the Climate Registry does cool workshops, so I would definitely, get on their email list. And they had this big series in 2020 that was coffee talks with climate leaders or something along those lines. Where one of the women who works there was just interviewing different, like today it's the climate associate from IBM, and today it's the World Bank, blah, blah, blah. And so that was cool. What else?
I'll put the Climate Registry website in the chat for everyone.
I know that there is more. I also think Rocky Mountain Institute is a great place, because they're always putting out like short blurbs and like very digestible but very interesting things about emerging technologies or trends in climate, etc. And also I know that they are doing a lot of hiring as well, so that's a good tip.
Yeah,
and we'll continue to.
Awesome. One more question that I thought of before we wrap it up. Professional development wise, are you required to do anything? Do you plan on doing anything? If you're not required, just what does that look like?
Yeah, I think the main professional development here is that I've heard this on a couple occasions, that as we stay at Resource Innovations within this team at least longer, we are kind of expected to become subject matter experts. So it's like, whether that's outage cost studies or it's, electric vehicle charging, something like a little bit niche within what we do. So I've attended several conferences where I'm just a listener, but maybe in a year or two, I would be someone who's presenting at a conference. So they kind of put you out there to attend conferences, represent them, and show off whatever subject it is that you've learned about over your time there. So that's one professional development wise. Guess I'm trying to, I think there was, there's also like, they give us a lot of resources for business writing. So that's helpful for like writing memos and reports. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, that's all I have. So this is your last chance, audience, to raise your hand. Oh, yes, we got one. Awesome. All right, Rebecca, I'm gonna allow you to talk. Ask you to unmute.
Hi.
So you can just say what year you are, what school you're in, and then go ahead.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm actually at Harris. I'm doing the MPP. Actually, my question is, I know that you mentioned a lot about the subjects or the skills required while at Harris to get into the space, or like where you are now. Do we actually have to take econometrics? So I took it, I was an econ major in undergrad, not in the US, and I did a subject in econometrics. But at Harris, I am taking my class, part of the core includes, I think it includes econometrics in the next quarter, but I was just wondering if it's completely essential to take a subject like applied econometrics.
I would say no. If you, because you're a Harris student, and if you do the first year of what's required at Harris, I think that you are qualified, for this specific path, where there's other consulting firms that are way more management consulting and much less analysis. And I think those specifically too wouldn't require as much quantitative background for most, placements or jobs that they have. But at the same time, it's helpful to keep practicing these skills. But really, when I'm saying econometrics, I'm mostly just talking about the program eval class and the stats series that you do. So I know the stats series, you're doing it already because it's required. But program eval is very, very helpful and super useful to just practice applying the things you learn in stats kind of to the next step. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I do also want to ask about whether do we have time to ask another question?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
I just want to check if it's okay to not be a US citizen to apply.
For resource innovations, yes, it's okay. We just hired a Harris grad who's from India.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you, Rebecca. We do have a question in the chat box or the Q&A box, so I can open that up. I'll just read it. What are potential entry-level roles that could examine consumer behavior in the energy industry or any other roles for non-quantitative backgrounds?
Okay, so consumer behavior as in like in a sustainability lens or kind of a...
I'm going to assume consumer behavior is in like using energy, like an energy user.
Okay. Okay, can you repeat the question one more time? Sorry.
What are potential entry-level roles that could examine consumer behavior in the energy industry or any other roles for non-quantitative backgrounds? I think you could click on the Q&A and it might open up for you. I'm not sure if you can see the Q&A.
Well, might need to think about this a little bit because something I've discovered since having worked in a couple different energy related roles, but mostly this one is that while it's all the energy industry, it can be rather siloed off, like energy efficiency, completely different from demand side management stuff or demand response programs that I'm looking at all of the time. So I'm constantly shocked how little I know about things that are super similar just because they're all so complex and kind of siloed off from each other. But I think still, that being said, I think, like I said before, Rocky Mountain industry, I think their position might be called associate or something along those lines. That is the entry level one, maybe research associate, something along those lines, where they do mostly qualitative research. They do some quantitative, and it looks at a lot of energy trends too, depending on what team you're at there. If I rack my brain more, I think, maybe something so in Colorado, we have the governor's office has something called the Colorado Energy Office, which is inside of the governor's office. And so something like that in whatever state, maybe Illinois, they have a small government office that would do policy analysis of consumer behavior potentially. Thinking more about it. I might need to get back to you on that one too. But that's a really interesting question though, I think. Because I think most of it would be quantitative to some extent, I guess, is making me a little stuck.
Okay, awesome. Hopefully that answers this question. Anyone else? Or we're gonna wrap up. So this is your last chance now. All right, going once, going twice. We're done. All right. Thank you so much, Anna-Elise, for coming to chat with us. This was really great. I'm glad we were able to get something on the books, even though it is finals week. I hope everyone has good finals. Good luck on finals. We are going to have, we have our new schedule for the career series up on the EPICS website. Our next one will be on January. Yeah, it's January. Oh my gosh. January 12th with Dean Arnold. He was working with the E&E lab. He's now doing his PhD program. So if you want to join us for that, that's next month. I'm going to put the schedule in the chat so you guys can check that out. Oh, and thank you.
Yep.
So Anna-Elise just put, this is job. I haven't clicked on this. This is just
sorry.
jobs.
Yes. I put the job that is for Harris students essentially
Awesome.
from our company right now. So the economic analyst position is the one that is the most geared towards the Harris skill set. There are other positions open as well that might be interesting to people that are also in Chicago, that I think they're like program associate, something along those lines, that they would be more project oriented and less quantitative in energy efficiency instead of demand response. And so that's the one that I think is the most applicable to a Harris skill set. Yes.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And if anyone needs to either email Anna-Elise, her email is up there, or if you lose it immediately, you can email me and I can get you guys in touch. But again, thank you guys so much for joining us. Have a great night and good luck with the rest of finals. And that's it. Thank you.